Welcome back to the Jigsaw Blogs. I'm Jacob Walton, and today we're going to look back at all the trap victims that were affected by the Jigsaw Killer. As I stated in the last video, there were a grand total of 123 victims that were discovered by the two games involving the Tapp family. However, it is well documented that Jigsaw had several more victims that failed their test. Jigsaw stated that his intentions were not to kill his victims, but rather teach them a lesson about appreciating their life. Having said that, there are over 200 Jigsaw victims that played his game and failed, and we're about to cover just about every one of them. I will make one clarification, however. I'm not going to talk about any Jigsaw survivors. They'll get their own video, believe me. And I also won't talk about any cops that were involved trying stopping Jigsaw games. They're going to get their own video as well. You will see the following in this video: the victim's name, the traps they were in, and the objectives they were given in order to survive, along with the photos showing the aftermath of their crime scene. Now, I am very aware that there is an audience out there that loves brutality, violence, and gore. Half of these photos on these walls right here show victims of the Jigsaw Killer. And they've been provided by Jigsaw Rules member from the Trap section, James Bell, who is a photographer for Video Production News. He has agreed to let me use and demonstrate these photos that I'm going to show in this video, but in exchange he wants a 1 to 2 minute video explaining why he loves the Jigsaw traps and why Jigsaw is what he is in his own words. And while I don't agree with him, while I don't support him, I am going to allow it, just try to be fair, because like I always say, history deserves to hear from both sides. Having said that, here's Video Production News member James Bell.
What's up, everybody? I'm James Bell, VPN's most reliable photographer. Today, I want to address everyone about the work John Kramer has done. Let's face it. You see, we as a people have become soft, neglectful, and, let's face it, stupid. We need to put faith back in ourselves. But instead, we have people like Jacob who look up to Jigsaw as if he was some kind of prophet who could deliver you wisdom on how to live your life to the fullest. See, I feel like it's people like me whose duty it is to remind you about the kind of man Jigsaw really was. And with these latest Jigsaw attacks going on, people are going to wake up and see John Kramer for what he really was: a master of human torture and a true innovator of violence. Now, I for one don't approve of murder. But that's the brilliant thing. Jigsaw doesn't physically kill any of his victims. Instead, these people were given a chance to save themselves, and when they failed, they met with those dire consequences. I was able to capture on camera most of these victims during my findings, and it got to a point where I was so excited to find the next Jigsaw victim just to see whatever torture device John Kramer came up with next. Well, that and finding the puzzle piece on each victim was always a challenge. And if you're thinking, "But James, these are dead human beings. Why would we enjoy looking at them?" Yeah, dead murderers, criminals, rapists, and thieves. So they deserve it, in my opinion. You're a history buff, Jakey. Tell me, when people look back on Caligula during his reign as the Emperor of Rome, do they remember him for his philosophies, or do they remember him as the cruel, sadistic tyrant that he was? What about the Catholics of medieval Europe, or the martyrs of Japan? You're starting to see my point. When people look back on John Kramer, they're going to remember him as one of those historical figures. And the sooner you realize that, the better. So, enjoy the photos. And have a good time recapping the victims for me, K-Pumpkin?
Spoken like a true freshman philosophy major. Anyways, what you're all about to see may be some disturbing images here, so if you're very squeamish and don't want to watch, I understand, but for documentation purposes, I'm going to allow it. So viewer discretion is advised. These are the trap victims of Jigsaw. Cecil Adams. Trap? Unknown, but involved razor wire. Tested for being a drug dealer and the murder of John and Jill's unborn child, Gideon. So yeah, this one was personal. Body was discovered by Detective David Tapp. Ronnie Navarro and Masaku Ito. Tested in the acid pulley trap. Their objective was to work together to escape a pulley system involving acid. Unfortunately, they both failed because they were in rival gangs. Both were burned alive. You may not have heard of these two men, but this is the first time Jigsaw actually used Billy the Puppet. Mark Wilson. Tested in the flammable jelly trap. His objective was to try and find the combination to the safe that had the antidote to the poison in his system. Unfortunately, the combination was written on the walls all around him, and he was only given a small wax candle. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him in the end, as he was burned alive by the candle and the flammable jelly. Seth Baxter. Tested in the pendulum trap. His objective in the game was to crush his hands to avoid being cut in half by the pendulum blade. He was tested for the murder of Mark Hoffman's sister, Angelina. Paul Lee. Cause of death? Trapped in razor wire. Reason for tested? Being suicidal for attention. Body found by Detective Tapp, Singh, Carey, and Hoffman.
Hello, Paul. You are a perfectly healthy, sane, middle-class male. Yet last month, you ran a straight razor across your wrist. Did you cut yourself because you truly wanted to die, or did you just want some attention? Tonight, you'll show me.
Donnie Greco. Cause of death? Stabbed repeatedly in the stomach by Amanda Young. Reason for test? Being a well-known drug dealer. Body discovered by Detective Singh, Tapp, and Hoffman. There was some confusion whether or not this man was given a chance to live or die, but he failed his own test before Amanda's game, and that's why he was placed in it the way he was. The bathroom game is probably arguably one of the most important Jigsaw games ever recorded, because this is a game where Jigsaw put himself front and center. Victims in the bathroom game were Lawrence Gordon and Adam Stanhide. The objective for Adam was to escape the bathroom without having Dr. Lawrence Gordon trying to kill him in order to save his family. Victims of the Whitehurst Insane Asylum. As stated in my last video, there were 87 victims of the Jigsaw Killer. Most notably, these victims included Melissa Singh, Oswald McGillicuddy, and Jeff Ridenour, who survived his game but committed suicide 2 days later. Another notable name that was killed at Whitehurst Insane Asylum was Alex Henson, whose cause of death was by falling into a pile of lawnmower blades that were being run while being tested with his girlfriend, Sydney Bristow. Both victims were given a choice. Only one person's weight could stay on the chain to hold them up, and the decision rested upon them. Cindy fought for her life and caused Alex to fall to his death. Dina Meyer. Tested in the public trap. Dina was cut in half by a table saw after being tested for being in a toxic relationship with her then boyfriends, Brad Turner and Ryan Reed. Victims in the Holmes Hotel and chemical plants. As stated in my other video, there were 36 victims in these games, including Campbell Inman, Michael Tapp, Carla Song, Henry Jacobs, Joseph Polzer, Sarah Pollock, and Solomon Bates. Michael Marks. Tested in the Venus flytrap. Michael was given 60 seconds to remove a key out from under his eyeball in order to free himself from the Venus flytrap. Body was discovered by Detective Carey and Eric Matthews. The Gas House games is considered by a lot of Jigsaw Rules fans as one of the most brutal games ever recorded. Here are the rules of the nerve gas house. The Jigsaw victims were given 2 hours to find an antidote to a deadly nerve gas poison. To get an antidote, they had to pass one of Jigsaw's deadly games. These victims include Amanda Young, Daniel Matthews, Gus Colliard, Obie Tate, Laura Hunter, Jonas Singer, Addison Corday, and Xavier Chavez. The only two survivors were Daniel Matthews and Amanda Young. The following is based upon Daniel's testimony, and the video footage is from the house itself. Gus Colliard, shot in the head by the door trigger trap. Obi Tate was burned alive in the furnace trap while trying to retrieve an antidote, but failed to turn the heat off when he was given the chance to. Laura Hunter died when the poison got a hold of her body and took its full effect. Jonas Singer, murdered by Xavier Chavez with a nail bat to the back of his head. Addison Corday. According to Daniel, he heard her scream like bloody murder and assumed she died either from a jigsaw trap or being murdered by Xavier Chavez. Xavier Chavez, murdered by Daniel Matthews in the bathroom in self-defense. Daniel also clarified that the bodies of Zepp Hendel and Adam Stanheidt were also discovered in the bathroom. Troy Baker, tested in the chain trap in the school classroom. Troy was given time to escape his trap after unhooking himself from the chains from his body in order to escape the nail bomb in the room. Unfortunately, he ran out of time. With Jigsaw on death's door, he and his apprentices had two final games in plan, one for grieving father Jeff Denlin and the other for SWAT officer Rig. For Jeff's game, he was tested to forgive victims that had done him wrong in the past. These victims include Danica Scott, who was tested in the freezer trap room. She was frozen to death after Jeff couldn't retrieve the key in time to save her. Judge Halden, who survived a pig vat trap but unfortunately was killed by a gunshot wound to the head in the next trap, which was for Timothy Young. Timothy Young was tested in Jigsaw's personal favorite trap, the rack. Cause of death, cervical trauma, along with his legs and arms and head twisted 180 degrees. Timothy was tested for the murder of Jeff's young son, Dylan. In the end, Jeff was able to take his vengeance out on Jigsaw and Amanda Young, but was unable to save his wife, Dr. Lynn Denlin, who died in the shock collar trap. Jeff himself was also later murdered by Agent Strom. Trevor Rustin, body discovered in the mausoleum trap. His objective was playing the game with Art Blank in the old school take of see no evil, hear no evil. Trevor was killed by Art Blank in self-defense with a head bludgeon and hit 4 times in the head with a ball peen hammer. Art Blank escapes and continues his next test. For SWAT officer Daniel Rigg, his game was trying to be tested in order to let go of everyone he's been trying to save and allow people to take their own responsibility and save themselves. Rigg was given 2 hours to learn these lessons in order to save Eric Matthews and Mark Hoffman. These victims include Brenda Taylor, who survived the hair trap but was later killed by Rigg in self-defense. Ivan Landis was tested in the bedroom trap. His objective was to gouge out his own eyes in order to escape. However, he couldn't make the choice in time and his body was dismembered by the trap itself. Rex Tillman, tested along with his wife Morgan in the spike trap. Morgan survived the test by pulling the spikes out of her body. However, Rex was impaled through major arteries by the rods that she later removed. At the end of the game, Rigg failed in saving Eric Matthews, Art Blank, Mark Hoffman, and even himself. More on that in another video. With Jigsaw gone, seemingly Mark Hoffman was the only one in charge and thus set up the game called the Fatal Five. The reason why these victims were tested by Mark Hoffman is because they were responsible for an arson crime that took the lives of 8 people. These victims include Ashley Calzone, Charles Solomon, Luba Gibbs, Malik Scott, and Britt Stevenson. Ashley was decapitated by a collar trap in which the 5 victims were forced to retrieve a single key that freed themselves. Charles was incinerated by a nail bomb trap after failing to escape the ceiling jar trap. Luba Gibbs was murdered by Britt Stevenson in order to escape the bathroom trap, in which 5 cables were hooked into each of her limbs in order to escape the room. Only Britt Stevenson and Malik Scott survived the game after cutting their hands in half, donated 10 pints of blood in order to escape the final room. Eddie Benson. Trap, pound of flesh with Simone Howard. The objective of the game was the victim who donated the most pounds of flesh got to survive. The loser of the game was killed by having the device drill screws into their heads. Fortunately for Simone, she gave her left arm in order to survive, but bad news for Eddie, he did not make it, and he was killed by severe brain trauma with screws drilled into his temples. Our next Jigsaw game focuses on the people who work for the Umbrella Health Organization, and I don't think having insurance helped any of these people in the end. The main player of the Umbrella Health Corporation games was CEO William Easton. Turns out William was the one that denied John Kramer health coverage for when he had his frontal lobe tumor. Hank Stropman. Tested in the oxygen crusher trap. The objective of the game was a test between Hank Stropman and William Easton to see who could hold their breath the longest. Hank, being a smoker for years, failed this test and was crushed by having his ribs caved in. Alan Jones. Tested in the barbed wire hanging trap. Along with his assistant, Addie Wilson, William was given the choice either to save Alan or save Addie. William went against his own policy and chose to save Addie, despite of her bad health. Alan was dropped by the platform and hung by a barbed wire noose. Debbie Kane. Tested in the steam room maze trap. Debbie was given the chance to survive the steam room with the help of William, but she was given 60 seconds to free herself from the spike trap with the key hidden inside William's body. She failed, and the spike pierced her brain. The carousel trap. This trap was designed for members of William's dog pit. Since 2/3 of all applications were denied by the dog pit, 2/3 of them would die in the carousel trap. These victims include Dave Winslow, Gina Rosner, Aaron Roberts, and Josh Myers. The only victims William chose to save were Emily Gomes and Shelby Jones. And in William's final game, he was tested by the Abbott family, which included Tara and Brent. Unfortunately for William, Harold Abbott's son, Brent, chose for him to die in the hydrofluoric acid trap, and thus William was melted alive. Jill Tuck later admitted to police that during the William Easton game, she tested Mark Hoffman in the reverse bear trap, but unfortunately for Jill, Hoffman escaped. So Hoffman spent the next several months planning to find a way to abduct and kill Jill Tuck. So he needed to come up with a game on his own. In order to go after Jill Tuck, Hoffman set up another game that involved a lot of horsepower. The car traps. The victims in the car trap tested by Mark Hoffman included Evan Bennington, Kara Heck, Dan Hepner, and Jake Barton. Evan, being the leader of the group and a known racist, was given the choice to free himself by ungluing himself from the seat and pulling the lever to free himself in order to save all his friends. Unfortunately, he ran out of time, and it caused a domino effect, killing all 4 in the process. And the final Jigsaw game that was set up by Mark Hoffman was known as the Survive game, which focuses on Jigsaw self-help guru Bobby Dagen. Bobby Dagen was forced to go through several trials in order to save all of his friends. The first victim that fell was Nina White, who was tested in the silent circle. Bobby was given 1 minute to retrieve a key that was tangled down a fish hook in Nina's stomach in order to free her, but Nina had to stay silent. With a fishing hook down her throat, that task was almost impossible. Suzanne Brooks, who was tested in the impalement wheel trap. The objective for Bobby was to hold the circuits together to close the gap to stop the wheel from turning. Unfortunately for Bobby, he ran out of time and Suzanne was impaled. Cale Armstrong, tested in the deafening mask trap. Bobby was given some time to retrieve a key in order to get the Cale, but unfortunately for Cale, He was blindfolded and hung by a noose. Bobby failed to give Cale the key in time, and he was hung for his trouble. Joyce Dagen, tested in the Brazen Bull trap. Bobby was given the choice to relive the trap that he imagined in his games by piercing the hooks into his chest and trying to connect the extension cords 20 feet in the air in order to stop the Brazen Bull from going off and killing his wife. Bobby went all the way up to the top, but his pectoral muscles gave way, causing him to fall and causing his wife to be burned alive. Jill Tuck. After murdering dozens of police officers, Mark Hoffman found a way to get the Jill Tuck in the police station and place the reverse bear trap on Jill Tuck, giving her no chance to survive the game. Jill's body was discovered in the aftermath of the reverse bear trap. Most of these victims on this wall right here are declared missing, but they're more likely dead, since their bodies were never recovered. These 4 people right here all went missing at the same time. Could they be Jigsaw related? Potentially. I guess we'll have to wait and see. These other victims that were missing include Anna Campbell, John's former neighbor, Carly Allen, one of Jill Tuck's first drug clinic attendees, Ryan Andrews, who was accused of murdering members of John's family in a car accident, and Mitch Butler, who was accused of selling John's nephew a failed motorbike accident which caused his death. So with Jigsaw having been credited for testing over 200 people, there had to have been some survivors, right? Well, in fact, there are. Tune into my next video as we go over each Jigsaw survivor and where they are and what they've been up to. Be sure to follow me on Twitter as well as on my Instagram account. I'm Jacob Walton, and this has been the... Gosh dang it! Mom! I don't care about your stupid doctor's appointments. You tell me that every day. Just take it back from the top, re-edit that post. Ready? Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram for more updates. I'm Jacob Walton, and this has been the Jigsaw Blogs. Okay. Dang it, Mom, now I have to re-edit because of you.